At the southern edge of Bin Sun, in the early darkness of December 3, 1967, a small American cavalry section found itself cut off and surrounded. Staff Sergeant Wilbert Bandy and 6 other soldiers from H Troop, 17th Cavalry, were holding a key highway bridge with 2 M113 armored personnel carriers. Their mission had been routine: secure the crossing, maintain a presence. But at the blink of an eye, it became a fight for survival. Hundreds of Viet Cong launched a sudden coordinated assault on the district town. The air erupted with mortars. Then came recoilless rifles. One of the carriers exploded in a fireball of twisted steel, spraying shrapnel across the crew. Wounded men fell out of the burning vehicle as machine gun fire raked the position from the tree line. Bandy dragged his injured comrades to cover, pleading and gasping. He took the radio. He called in artillery. Danger close, nearly on top of his own coordinates. They were outnumbered, outgunned, out of time. Then through the haze and the chaos, a sound began to rise. The defenders looked up. 2 AH-1G Cobras from the 123rd Aviation Battalion came in low and fast from the southeast. Sleek, narrow, shark-toothed and fanged with firepower, they dove into the battle like avenging predators. What came next was not just support, it was salvation. The AH-1 Cobra didn't appear by chance. It was born out of frustration and necessity. In the early years of the Vietnam War, U.S. troops relied heavily on the UH-1 Iroquois, better known as the Huey. Originally designed as a medical evacuation and utility transport helicopter, the Huey wasn't meant to fight. It was built to carry troops, ferry supplies, and airlift the wounded. But as the war escalated and enemy ambushes grew more aggressive, the need for aerial firepower became urgent. In response, the Huey was hastily modified with machine guns, rocket pods, and grenade launchers, transforming it into an improvised gunship. But it was never meant to be one. The added weight slowed it down. Its wide body made it an easy target, and every trip into hostile territory put both pilots and infantry at massive risk. What the Army needed wasn't a makeshift warrior. They needed a purpose-built killer. In 1965, Bell Helicopter presented a bold solution. A sleek, narrow-body helicopter with tandem seating and firepower built directly into its design. It wasn't a transport. It wasn't a medevac. It was a gunship, lean, fast, and lethal. Bell called it the Model 209. The Army gave it a name that would become legend, the AH-1 Cobra. Mounted under its narrow nose was the M28 turret system, which housed a 7.62mm and 134 minigun, a 6-barrel rotary machine gun capable of firing up to 4,000 rounds per minute, and a 40mm and 129 automatic grenade launcher, able to lob explosive shells with terrifying accuracy. These were controlled by the gunner in the front seat, who could sweep enemy positions at treetop level with a storm of bullets and grenades in a matter of seconds. But the real muscle of the Cobra came from its stub wings. Each wing was fitted with rocket pods, either the M158 or M200 launcher, carrying up to 19 2.75-inch folding fin aerial rockets. These weren't just dumb munitions. They came in high-explosive, anti-personnel, and anti-armor variants. By 1967, the Cobra was in Vietnam, and it didn't take long to make its presence known. At 2:00 a.m., 6 companies of Viet Cong fighters began creeping into position around the district headquarters. They came silent, organized, and well-prepared. Moments later, the night shattered. Mortars arsed overhead and dropped inside the compound like hammer strikes. Machine gun fire raked the perimeter, forcing the defenders flat against the dirt. Staff Sergeant Wilbert Bandy and his men from H Troop, 17th Cavalry, held the bridge south of the compound with 2 armored vehicles. When the first 57mm recoilless rifle blast hit one of the carriers, it blew open the hull and wounded nearly the entire crew. Still, Bandy didn't retreat. He dragged his bleeding men from the burning carrier, tossed ammo to the remaining gunners, and climbed atop the second vehicle, calling for artillery strikes, closer and closer to his own position. By dawn, it was clear. If help didn't come soon, there would be no one left to save. At 6:08 a.m., just as the first grey light stretched over the tree line, a sound began to rise, a deep, steady thumping, low and fast. The Cobras had arrived. Sleek, narrow-bodied, and shark-toothed, They looked nothing like the fat-belly Hueys the troops were used to. The Cobra was something new, something made for this exact moment. 2 Cobras from the 123rd Aviation Battalion swooped in low from the southeast, staying below the canopy, skimming the treetops. In tandem formation, they spotted the smoke signal near the burning armored carrier. That's all they needed. Without hesitation, the lead Cobra broke left and banked into a sharp diving run toward the southern tree line. On the ground, the Viet Cong had been preparing their final push. Masked behind dense vegetation with mortars and heavy machine guns, they never saw it coming. The first 2 rockets tore through the jungle like thunderbolts. Fire from stub wings on the Cobra's fuselage, the 2.75-inch slammed into the VC mortar pits and exploded in white-hot flashes, shredding the entire line with fragmentation. Seconds later, the Cobra's nose swung left, and the 7.62mm minigun turret began to whine. What came next was devastation. Hundreds of rounds sprayed across the tree line in tightly controlled bursts. Muzzle flashes disappeared, enemy silhouettes crumpled. The Cobra pilot held his course for just 3 seconds, just long enough to finish the pass, then pulled up into a climbing turn, already lining up for another run. Meanwhile, the second Cobra circled north and spotted another threat. Dozens of Viet Cong using the village huts to fire down toward the compound. The gunner flipped to the 40mm grenade launcher, and with a rhythmic thump, 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 lobbed high explosive shells directly into the rooftops. Back in a tight racetrack pattern, the 2 Cobras performed what pilots call constant cover. While one aircraft delivered suppressive fire, the other climbed, scouted, and repositioned. They didn't just shoot, they hunted. With the enemy reeling, reinforcements were inbound. A pair of Hueys, loaded with infantry from the 198th Brigade, came in low from the south. The Cobras shifted instantly. One remained overhead, circling like a sentry, while the other dropped down to escort the Hueys in. As the troop helicopters flared for landing, bursts of enemy fire broke out from a canal position the Cobras hadn't cleared yet. But it was too late for the Viet Cong. The lead Cobra spun and hovered sideways, loosing a perfect stream of 40mm grenades into the position. The incoming fire stopped instantly. The infantry hit the ground running. By 7:15 am, the battle had shifted. The defenders were no longer fighting to survive, they were pushing back, but the Cobras weren't done. A light 06 Loach Scout helicopter arrived to assist. Its job? Draw fire and expose survivors. Flying low and slow, the Loach hovered just above the tree line, taunting any hiding VC to fire. The Cobra wingman was already circling above. As soon as the scout marked the shot, the Cobra rolled in like a hammer. Another 19 rockets burst into the tree line, followed by a spray of minigun rounds. The ambush site was annihilated. In just over an hour, the Cobras changed everything. They destroyed at least 4 fortified enemy positions, silenced multiple mortar teams, and cleared the way for Hueys bringing reinforcements. Their rocket and minigun strikes turned enemy strongholds into smoking craters, cutting down an estimated 20 to 30 Viet Cong and shattering the assault on Bin Sun. The Cobras didn't just support the battle, they broke the enemy and made the rescue possible. By 8:00 am, Bin Sun was back under Allied control. The compound was scarred, burning huts, bloodied sandbags, craters in the road, but it held. The bridge south of town, where Bandy's team had made their final stand, was untouched. 14 dead VC were counted near his vehicles. 7 more lay in the jungle. Dozens more were missing. Staff Sergeant Bandy's men were alive. Shell-shocked, wounded, and deafened, but alive. Because when they needed it most, 2 Cobras came for them. Not in numbers, not in massed waves, just 2 birds, 2 blades, 2 fangs. It wasn't supposed to be a famous battle. No headlines, no movies. But for the men who fought at Bin Sun, that day became legend. And the Cobra became something more than a weapon. It became a symbol of salvation. The first aircraft designed not to transport troops, but to fight for them. To kill for them. To save them. The Cobras didn't just provide support that day. They turned a guaranteed defeat into a sudden, explosive victory. And they did it 30 feet off the ground, under direct fire, with pinpoint accuracy and terrifying power. To the men on the ground, it was more than air support. It was a rescue mission. Thanks for watching.